Hello everybody, welcome to Kavish IAS Converting Possibilities into Reality. I am Ankita and I am going to be continuing the series of the Sustainable Development Goals, and in this session we are going to be discussing the SDG goal number 4, which talks about quality education. So as we know that the aim of the Sustainable Development Goals is to ensure a very holistic living standard of life for all sections of the society. And when we are talking about the SDG goal number 4, the aim of the SDG goal number 4 is to ensure that an inclusive and equitable quality education is achieved for all sections of society and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. When we are talking about inclusivity, we are talking about all sections of society, right? For example, we know that when it comes to the vulnerable households, the economically or the socially vulnerable households, the poorest of the children, they bear the brunt of the most of the underdevelopment that happens in a society. And the aim of the Sustainable Development Goal number 4 is to ensure that all sections of society, irrespective of their purchasing power, irrespective of the caste and tribes that they belong to, they all must possess the and access good quality education. So there are 7 targets under this goal, as we know. So let's have a look at what are these 7 targets. The 7 targets include ensuring effective universal primary and secondary education, early childhood development, develop skills for decent work, because of course the main motto of having a good quality education is to get employment, right? Because with employment we will be able to achieve all the other sustainable development goals, as we know that all the SDGs are interconnected with each other. So the improvement in one SDG will have a positive impact on other SDGs. So when we get good quality education, we also get good quality skills for decent work. With that, we can contain hunger, we can contain poverty, we can get access to good quality food and drinking water and all other resources that is required to fetch a good quality life for ourselves. So the other targets also include that there must be gender equality in a society and to encourage sustainable development. So these are some of the aims and targets that are set by the SDG 4. Let us have a look at the scenario at the global level. So we know that the pandemic has hit and it has affected our society in many ways. But when we are talking about a good quality education, we can see that even before the COVID-19 pandemic came, as many as 1.5 billion students were out of school in early 2020, and there was a global consensus that education systems in many of the even the developing countries were not being able to deliver good quality education that was needed and required to have all the skills necessary to thrive. For example, we might have very good quality education, we might have somebody who is a graduate or a postgraduate, but they do not have enough skills to get the employment that they deserve. So in that case, we can say that quality education is not achieved. As COVID-19 pandemic arrived, the global learning crisis deepened. And according to the Sustainable Development Goals Report 2021, we can see that almost 147 million children have missed over half in-person instruction in 2020 to 2021, which means that almost half of the people, 147 million people, and half of them could not achieve school kind of education where they would be able to get face to face kind of education. Okay, so 24 million learners may never return to school, and globally, almost 50% of the primary schools do not have access to computers and internet. So, this issue right here, where almost 50% of primary schools do not have enough internet connectivities, this problem is known as the problem of digital divide, which means that digitalization has created a division between the economically affluent families and the economically weaker families. So, this is one of the consequences that the pandemic has put on us, and the pandemic has forced also many developing nations to adopt newer technologies in order to support their efforts towards distant learning and online education. Now, as we know that the industry of ed tech has been growing rapidly because many of the schools took a lot of time to reopen, and there were many disruptions that were causing a very rough system of education, which is why we have seen that many edtech platforms, many digital platforms have come up with newer kind of strategies, newer degree courses, and even some foreign universities, they have opened up a new set of online system of education. So now let us have a look at the Indian scenario. So recently the ACER report has been published. So what is this ACER report? The ACER report is about the annual status of education report. So this ACER report has been recently released, which takes a survey in all the rural districts across the whole country. And this ACER report highlighted the impact of pandemic on education. And some of the key takeaways are that there has been increment in children enrollment in schools. Of course, it's a very good positive point that we can see that almost 98.4% of children are enrolled in school in the age bracket of 6 to 14. But apart from that, there are certain negative uh, progresses that we can see. We can see that there has been decline in the basic reading and arithmetic skills of the rural children of standard 3 and 5, and there has been improvement in girls enrollment, but there has been surge in students attending tuition classes. That is, more percentage of students nowadays attend the coaching classes. But there are certain fallouts that we can see, which is almost many of the students, there has been decline in basic reading and arithmetic skills, which means that most of the rural students, almost 50% of the rural students, they do not have enough comprehension skills and addition skills, addition or basic mathematics skills. Okay, so you can understand that this is not having quality education. This is not quality education because they are not at par with the national standards or even international standards. So we can see that there is a lack in accessibility of quality education, and this has been highlighted in the latest ACER report. We will have a look at the constitutional provisions that are related to education. First of all, we will see that as per the Article 45 of the DPSP, the Directive Principles of State Policy, the state shall endeavor to provide free and compulsory education for all children until the completion of 14 years. So the free and compulsory education, this is mandated by the Constitution itself. And other than that, there has been an amendment which is made under the 42nd Amendment Act of 1976, where education was shifted from state list to concurrent list. So, it was shifted, the subject of education was shifted to concurrent list so that the union will be able to make the policies, the necessary policies and directives that are required to have to provide good quality education. It was shifted from the state list to concurrent list. Apart from that, the right to education was made a fundamental right under the Article 21A of the Constitution of India, and this was established by the 86th Amendment Act of 2002. So these are the most important constitutional provisions mandated by the Constitution itself when it comes to education. Next, we will see what are the challenges in the present education sector prevailing in Indian system. So, most importantly, one factor that has to be talked about is the inadequate government funding. So, when it comes to the government expenditure, the current government expenditure as per the latest economic survey of 2021 to 22, it was around 4.6% of the total GDP. And generally the government spending in education is, it roams around in the bracket of 3 to 4% of the total GDP, which is definitely not up to the mark as compared to developed as well as even the developing nations. Apart from that, there is mass illiteracy, which means that even though the policies are made and implemented, but still 25% of Indians still have remained illiterate, which again ensures the fact that quality education is far from achieved. Okay, quality education is nowhere near to where it must be. Then there are other defects like infrastructural issues where school systems lack electricity, hygienic equipments, internet connectivity and computers. Like we said that 50% of the primary schools, they do not have enough internet connectivities and computer systems. Apart from that, according to the UNICEF reports, there are 50% of schools which lack proper sanitation facilities. 50% of schools, they do not have enough sanitation facilities, which also includes menstrual hygiene facilities for women, for girls, and they also do not have good electricity. Even in the rural corners of India, especially in the rural corners of India, there are many school systems which do not have proper furniture and proper electricity supplies. So, of course, these are few very important infrastructural loopholes that need to be fixed. Apart from that, there is an issue of inadequate teacher pupil ratio. So Delhi has 33 students for every teacher at upper primary level, and even Bihar has the poorest ratio when it comes to the primary level. So which means that there are too many pupils, too too many pupils as with for one teacher. So when the teacher pupil ratio is very much skewed, it means that the teacher is unable to take care of the students requirements and needs and their loopholes. So it means that again the quality education is not being achieved. So the teacher pupil ratio must be proper and adequate. And also the proficiency of teachers is one thing that must be checked, because there are so many cases where the teachers are not even proficient enough and efficient enough to give the education that is uh, supposed, that is required of that person to teach. And there are high dropout rates. Of course, we know that in the pandemic situation there has been rise in the girl students dropout rates. So the annual dropout rate according to the UD's plus report is somewhere around 14.6%, okay, from the secondary school. So this is something which needs to be fixed. And also another issue, that female dropouts are being higher, because in the pandemic situation we have seen that whenever there is a crisis in a family, it's always the females, they have to adjust and compromise, and their education is compromised. There has been also rise in cases of child marriages. So the females and the girl students, they had to stop their education. And of course, the last point, we come to the issue of gender inequality. The gender disparities and patriarchal societies still make it difficult for girls to opt for higher education and employment. Next, we will have a look at the government initiatives that has been launched in recent times. We will see that there is a scheme called Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan. So this Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, this was an integrated scheme for the school education from preschool till class 12 to ensure inclusive education, and this is in accordance with the SDGs. So all the SDGs, which also means that the school will provide good quality drinking water, and it will take care of midday meal system, okay, and a good quality classrooms. So all of these were mandated under the Samagra Shiksha campaign. Another very important of the initiatives that was launched in 2015 was the Beti Bachao Beti Padhao campaign, and this was done to prevent the gender based sex selection elimination, because of course in India we have the issue of female infanticide or even feticide, which means that once it's known that the fetus is a female, then the fetus is killed. So this campaign was launched, Beti Bachao Beti Padhao, in 2015 to prevent this gender-based sex selection and to ensure the girl child survival and to promote their education and to promote their rights. We also have very important the PM Shri schools. This is under the National Education Policy of 2020, which is to upgrade and develop more than 14,500 schools all across the country. Next, we will come to a very important policy that has been launched, the National Education Policy 2020, which ensures a major reform in the education sector with the ambition of 100% of gross enrollment ratio in schools to be achieved by 2030. and it aims to replace the current 10 plus 2 system with 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4 curricular structure. Other than that, there has to be a reform in the school governance, and there has been an inculcation of the vocational education with internships, which means if implemented properly, education will also go alongside employment. So the thing is, not only attaining education is important, but we also have to see that this educated graduates, they are able to take part in the increasing labor force of the country. So to ensure that vocational education with internship opportunities is a good cause in that direction. Apart from that, there has been push for three language formula, and also a talk about promoting vernacular languages education, and establishment of bank of credits to facilitate the transfer of credits. Apart from that, some foreign universities to set up campuses in India has also been mandated under the national education policy. So this is one a very revolutionary step towards reforming the education sector. We will see what are the steps that we can take to go in the positive direction when it comes to reforming the education sector. First of all, there has to be an increment in the government expenditure, with also the private players taking part. Okay, because this will also enable a very prosperous research culture in the Indian market, which it really lacks. Apart from that, there should be a push towards experiential learning approach, which means that the school curriculum should not promote spoon feeding of the students. Spoon feeding of curriculum should not be promoted. Rather, practical approach of the syllabus of understanding and conceptual learning should be encouraged. Apart from that, streamlining the degree courses with demand of industry, which means that all the courses that one attains in the universities, that must be in line with the demand of the industry, and this will also ensure that uh, the entrepreneurship situation in India and the startup section of India, that is also startup, edtech, and the entrepreneurship capacities of youth is utilized properly. Apart from that, there has to be improvement in the government school infrastructure, because most of the government schools do not have proper furniture systems, proper classroom systems, proper